Hey everybody, this is Steve. I wanted to record a little video to introduce this first big peer review, in part because there wasn't as much participation in the pre-peer review that I would have liked to have seen, in part because I want to emphasize the importance of this peer review, and also in part because Eli, it adds a different sort of layer in terms of how we're going to do peer review. Okay. The first thing I want to point out is that you've probably all been in some kind of peer review activity before in another writing class. And I guess there's a couple of things you need to sort of be aware of as we go into it. Number one, peer review only works to the extent that you accept the premise of peer review, which is that it's not just me who can give you feedback on your project. That is, your peers can give you good and valuable feedback on your project too. Even if you don't believe that to be true, and that is actually true, um, you have to pretend that it's true. So in other words, go with the, suspend disbelief and go with it, and you'll see that it actually does work. The second thing is that one of the problems that I've seen with peer review that is actually kind of a good thing because it's people being nice to each other, and that is that people tend to not give the level of detail of peer review that they want to receive. Okay, so what I'm asking you to do here is give the level of feedback and critique of the project that you're reviewing that you would hope to receive from your peers. Okay, I'm not saying be a jerk. I'm saying be polite, but I'm also saying be honest and be direct. It's really easy to give peer review along the lines of like, I wouldn't change a thing. This is great, but that's not very helpful. Okay. Um, and the last thing I want to point out is that Eli adds a different wrinkle to it, and I want to show you a brief video of what Eli does for me as an instructor. So watch this, and hopefully this will make some sense. Okay, so let me show you what the Eli review system looks like from my point of view as an instructor. Here I'm going to click on the peer review or actually I'm going to click on the response to the pre-peer review that were supposed to complete on Friday. Now, the first thing I want to point out is that a lot of you didn't do it, which is a problem. This is part of the course grade, and it's worth a fair amount. So if you don't do it, you don't get those points, and that's kind of a problem, right? Here, what I can do is I can show you the sort of like uh, the sort of details of the submission that everybody did. So, for example, this is I can see which students did what or which students didn't do what. I can actually see the names if I want to, as far as this goes. I can go to the writing feedback, which what it does is it shows the sort of kinds of responses that people gave for different things. So, for example, I can see here just a selection that these are sort of the kind of some of the responses that people gave to different things, as far as this goes. And again, I can get into the details of each one of these sorts of suggestions and evaluations and stuff like that. The reviewer feedback, I can sort of see what comments were made, what the average comments were made per reviewer, how the feedback was rated by recipients, and the average rating for the comments. So in other words, and just to point out two things here real quick, this number of 4.8 in terms of average rating of comments, that would suggest that people aren't being very critical on how they rate their comments, because if the average on a scale of a 1 to 5 is 4.8, that means that people are just saying, oh, it's great. And that kind of feedback is not necessarily going to be that useful for your peers, okay? This is another thing I want to highlight here too. Average feedback rated by recipients, 31.8%. That means that only a third of you, or about a third of you who participated in this, gave feedback on the comments that you received. And that's part of what you want to do with this too, is that you want to actually review the quality of the feedback that you receive for these things, okay? Engagement data, it's kind of interesting because basically what this does is it shows the ratio of given comments received, the count of comments, the rate of helpfulness, and things like that. So here's the thing. Classmate number 2 here, they gave a total of 3 comments that was rated very helpful, and they only received 1 comment, which means that this is actually kind of out of whack. This student, classmate number 2 is actually performing above the average, whereas classmate number 17 received 0 comments, and you got 0%. So this is actually kind of well, this is perhaps someone who didn't actually finish. Maybe a better example would be, say, classmate number 12 here. So 0.08 ratio means that this student received or gave fewer comments than they received. Okay, so they gave 3 comments. It's very helpful. Again, it looks like that helpfulness scale is a little bit out of whack as far as this goes, but they received 4 comments. Okay, it's even a little bit more out of whack here with this student who gave 2 comments and received 4 comments. Okay, so the reason why this is important is because I can now see as a sort of like larger class sort of perspective on what sort of comments that everybody's receiving and offer some advice. So again, the first piece of advice I would offer is be more critical here about your comments, how helpful they are or not being. Okay, make sure that you give the same amount of comments that you hope to receive, and make sure they're constructive. Now, the other thing I should point out too is that I can go into the specifics of this student's work, and I can look at both the writing, see here the rating scale responses, what people rated, and things like that, and I can give more specific comments on each student's work, and I can sort of track each student's work with this here. So, for example, if I click on, say, the rating scale reviews, I can see that this is what this person's actually a little bit more critical in some ways than some other people have been, as far as like giving back feedback, and I think that and here is where you can get into the ratings and the endorsing and things like that. Okay, I hope that helps a little. I know it's a little confusing because you probably haven't seen this before. I haven't used this that much before, so we're still both trying to get a little bit used to it. My goal is to follow after people with endorsements and other comments, both on the next peer review for the Style Remake project, and also for your revision plan. I'll hopefully give you a little bit of feedback on that. It won't be much, but it'll be some to hopefully point you in the right direction. A couple of the things I'll mention real quick about Eli Review. Eli Review is the tool I'm basically going to use to figure out the grade that you'll receive for the participation part of the course. Among other things, what's going to figure in heavily into what grade you get is that ratio. How many comments did you give versus how many comments did you receive? If that number is less than 1, that's going to hurt your grade, because that indicates to me that you got comments, but you weren't generous with people giving them back. The extent to which you are endorsed by other people or receive stars or feedback from the quality of your feedback is also going to figure into the grade for participation for this part of the class too. Okay, and last but not least, this is not an optional activity. I mean, this is something that I expect everybody to do, and I expect everybody to do with for all these assignments, including the small ones that a lot of people didn't do for the pre-peer review thing. Okay, all right, I think that is all I got for now. Get to it. I'll see you online.